Many years ago, there was a girl I was seeing. She was amazing. She was nice, good at everything, friendly with everyone, and always wanted to see me. We couldn't get enough of each other and began to date less than a month after meeting. We dated for a year and then realized that sadly, we were too different. Maybe we didn't like each other as much as we thought we did. Things weren't working out. We wanted different things. We broke up. She ended up meeting another guy that she liked immediately after we ended things. I was heartbroken, even though our separation was mutual. Not long after, though, she was in the area for a month for work, and we saw each other. A lot of the reservations we had about each other we had worked on while we were apart. A lot of the things we took for granted we began to see in each other brand new. For the first time, we could see each other in a new light, in a way where we weren't blindsided to the commitment of being in a relationship, where we could appreciate each other for our traits without the duty of love. We began to deeply fall. I told her to end things with the boy she was seeing, but she wouldn't. We were becoming increasingly more intimate, and I knew that if she slept with me, it would obviously be a deal breaker, so I urged her to end it, but she held on to her relationship even as things progressed between us. Eventually, she cheated on him with me. We began to see each other briefly, but the way things had happened damaged our relationship. That, built upon our pre-existing issues, didn't lend itself to a happy ending. Without saying too much, the three of us got caught up into a messy love triangle. It wasn't a good look for anyone, and none of us are proud of it. Alas, they ended up together, whereas we ended things on awful terms and didn't talk for months. Despite the situation, both of us are incredibly understanding and forgiving people. During the holidays, she came back to the area to visit. We made up quickly, maybe too quickly. Things escalated between us. It went from, "Hey, what's up?" to "Hey, I miss you," to "Hey, I love you," in less than a week. The problem, she was still seeing this other guy. I knew that he didn't understand her, and the connection that we had wasn't even close in comparison. After all, this was the second time this was happening. She was open about it, telling me that she loved me, something she didn't have to tell me for me to know. As the holidays progressed, we became more intimate and sexual, but she drew the line at sleeping with me. We would cuddle, we might kiss lightly, grind on each other, but for her, sex was the boundary. And of course, like any young male, I wanted to have sex. And she knew that. She was a tease. It wasn't the attention that she wanted, it was a mix of a lot of things. One part was creating the sexually charged tension it constantly generated between us, where she would say things like, "You know you want me," or "Are you sure you don't want me to?" And then another part was messing with me and dragging it out, since we both basically knew we were going to get back together eventually. And then the last and most important part was the dichotomy of her being in love with me and wanting to sleep with me, but not wanting to break things off with and hurt the boy she was seeing, because something like this had already happened between us and him respectively. I told her to break up with him. I didn't like the guy, but I certainly didn't hate him. There's no reason to cheat on him and hurt him. Just break up with him. You're in love with me. The arguments and rhetoric was eerily similar to the previous year, where the same scenario had happened. Yes, neither of us really learned, but I guess that's what you do when you're young. You make mistakes. She thought she had enough willpower to say no to me and go back to him after the holidays and pretend like none of this had happened, but I knew it wasn't possible. It wasn't a temporary fling revolved around sexual tension and hormones. We were deeply in love, and they weren't. And so even though she was going far away after the holidays, there wasn't a good way out of it except to end things with him. But she refused to do so. Amidst this, the intimacy, the teasing, etc. went on. It wasn't insinuative teasing. We would cuddle and she would grind herself into me, sometimes with almost no or even no clothing on, lick my ear, whisper to me that she knew I wanted her, the whole 9 yards. We had a complicated relationship and it was confusing as hell. There were plenty of times where no meant yes please, and actually no meant yes, and no really I mean no meant reluctantly yes. We pushed a lot of boundaries, figuring what each other wanted beyond the boundaries of language, delving deep into each other's minds. We didn't have safe words. It wasn't a BDSM relationship, just a guy who loved a girl with an esoteric psyche. But I got tired of it. I got tired of knowing she was going to go back to this guy, of being blue-balled every day, and of living in constant uncertainty of the very relationship that mattered more than anything else. We saw each other around the clock, every single day. It was killing me. I told her that even though I loved her, what she was doing was wrong and I couldn't handle it anymore. On top of repeatedly telling her to break up with the boy she was seeing, I gave her an ultimatum. If you do this one more time, I'm just gonna be with you. I mean it. Stop. It's not funny anymore. It was obvious that she wanted to be with me, and I made it obvious to her that I wanted to be with her. I seemed to me it was only logical, given my ultimatum, that if she began that whole charade with me again, it would only be because she wanted to be with me. The next time she started it up, I resisted. If I began to touch her, it would give her some plausible deniability that it wasn't just her, that I had actively propagated the situation. And she pressed on. I told her that I wasn't kidding around this time, that I would be with her, but she laughed about it and continued. I thought, well, this is it. I guess she finally wants to be with me. As she was dry humping me, having the time of her life, it crossed my limit. I turned her around and pulled down her panties. She told me, no, stop, please, but she was soaking wet. I told you I wasn't joking around. Do you ever listen? I told you I would be with you. Did you really want this that badly? And I was with her. Let's pause this for a moment and so I can explain more of the situation. It obviously wasn't some passionate romantic at last moment where we finally had sex and held each other. On the flip side, it also wasn't a brutal and savage animalistic grape, though definitely closer to that than the prior. There was a lot going on. Firstly, yes, it was incredibly primitive and biological. To deny that just makes this entire confession meaningless. I only mean to clarify that I didn't come on to her because I lost control. There were a lot of points that were calculated into the decision here. I let her know that I was going to be with her if she pushed on, so if she was doing so, she must want to be with me, right? I wasn't going to let myself be pushed around. I knew she wanted me romantically and sexually outside of that moment. I knew that being with me would be the last straw for her relationship and she would cut things off afterwards. The intimacy was very brief, and I finished and got off of her. I was with her hard, and it was intense. I told her, I told you I would do it, why don't you listen to me? It felt good to finally be with her, but I was honestly a little angry that she would push me to that point. But at the same time, I was glad that we had finally crossed the deep end where I wouldn't have to play this day after day with her. Suddenly, I realized that I wasn't sure of the mood. I'm normally an extremely dutiful lover, but I had gotten caught up in such a haze that I had no idea what her thoughts were at the time. I asked her, did you enjoy it? Are you okay? I finally looked at her for the first time with a clear head and she was crying to herself. I wasn't expecting that. She had instigated the situation so many times, there wasn't any way in my mind that she wasn't going to enjoy it. I didn't know what to say. What was there to say? She went to the bathroom and cleaned up, and I apologized. It wasn't a real apology. I didn't understand the gravity of what had just happened. I told her I was sorry for what happened, but I had told her, hadn't I, multiple times, that if she continued to do what she was doing, that I would be with her. She didn't respond, so I backtracked and realized that I had messed up more than I realized. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I was sorry. I was so sorry. I had just forced myself onto the girl I love. Was there a way back? What was I supposed to do? Surprisingly enough, life went on. Although that night had been uncomfortable, over the next few weeks we talked about it and life went back to normal. She ended things with the boy she was seeing. We began to be with each other and then we began to date. Unfortunately, even though we loved and understood each other deeply, some things weren't meant to be. We stayed friends and talked intimately, but agreed to see other people. Eventually, we began to grow apart. She began acting differently. She stopped responding as frequently. I was going through a rough patch and she stopped responding to me. Was she seeing that guy again for the third time? Was it a new guy? Were we over? I was having a really hard time and I ended up blowing up at her. Cue one of my most ironic decisions of my entire life. No, it turns out there was no guy. It turns out she ended things with him officially, both for friendship and in regards to relationships. It turned out she actually wasn't over the situation. As context, she had been assaulted years prior, something that I was always supportive and understanding of. We both resented the person who did it to her, that it made the entire situation I had with her even more complicated. Her assault had set so heavily within me over the years that prior to this conversation with her, I had been in denial of what I had done to her. No, I didn't grape her, and if I did, it wasn't equivalent to a real grape, and if it was, she was over it, and if she wasn't, she had wanted it, and if she didn't, I had told her it would happen. The entire creed. Well, she thought she was over what had happened. She had wanted to be over it, but she wasn't. Over the past month, she was having nightmares about being graped. Before, it had always been her assailant from her childhood, and I had always been there to support her. This time it was me. She completely ended things with me that night. She's a very forgiving person, but I remember her saying, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I don't ever want to talk to you again." I was left a complete mess. I loved this girl more than anything else, and I know she loved me and trusted me more than she loved and trusted her entire family put together. What can you say when you become everything that you hate, when you grape the person you love most, and now you're the demon she dreams about? There's not much you can do except sit there and hate yourself. Cry doesn't really fit the mood. I've had hard times, but realistically, I never considered suicide. This was the first time where I actually considered it, as if committing suicide would be the only fair way to even begin to compensate for the things I had done. The ensuing months were some of the hardest months of my life. Coming to terms with what had happened and not being able to reach out to her. I was a husk of a human being for a long time afterwards. It took me a while and a lot of self-reflection, but I began to pull my life together. I didn't and still haven't forgive myself for what I did, but there was really only one thing for me to do: move forward, make up to my actions, and become a better person. I had immersed myself deeply into growing, but revolving a large portion of my life around the idea of making it up to her when I got a text from her out of the blue. She was in town and she wanted to meet up an hour away. No, I'm not busy. I was. And yes, of course I can meet up.
We met up and talked. We talked for 10 hours straight. We talked about the people we had met, how our friends had been, how work had been, how the new people we had seen had gone awfully, and all of the little things. We laid down in the middle of a street in her subdivision and looked up at the stars, and I questionably laid my head in her lap as we talked about every single thing that we could think of, and then some more. Eventually, we got to the topic, and my heart completely twisted. I felt like puking, my feelings going back to the day that she had first told me. She told me that she had thought about it a lot over the period we had been away, and she had gotten over it. She forgave me. She told me that she forgave me and that she loved me and that she missed me so much, and she held me, and I had never cried from happiness before, so I didn't understand what was happening as I dripped tears off of my face like a giant man-child. I cried so much and smiled so much I began to hit myself in the face so I could wake up. I had never felt like I was in a dream before, like life was too good to be real, but there I felt it, and I needed to know it was real. I could live my entire life chasing that feeling. I don't think I'll ever make that night up to her, even if she's told me that I've made up for it. As for the rest of the story, we're still together. We're happy, actually really happy. Sometimes I think I could be happier, especially when we're apart, but don't we all? More importantly, we both know that we have a relationship that shatters what's societally acceptable, and we're happy with it. That we've carved an unbreakable bond out of our flaws and demons where many other relationships and people would collapse. And maybe other people might judge us for the decisions that we've made, but we're happy. We're genuinely happy. I'm detailing all of this only to get it off my chest, but because when sexual assault occurs, it's not as simple and clean-cut as many people think. Many sexual assaults, I've come to learn, are so multifaceted and complex that it's impossible to coherently describe the dynamics in an essay of this length, let alone a 250-character tweet. Though many can be someone physically and sexually assaulting you in a dark alley or someone touching you while you're drunk, many aren't. Sexual assault often blurs the lines between romance, power, assault, and bring gray area into a lot of different aspects of the context. After I grapped my girlfriend, I did a lot of self-reflection. I thought about a lot of relationships that I had and realized that I had frequently pushed the boundaries of reluctance too far. I didn't understand that maybe didn't mean yes, and that a reluctant yes could even mean no. I was never a bro, I was always a sweet guy and earnest guy. I didn't realize that didn't stop me from being a grapper. I talked to very close friends about it. I read up on it, I thought about it some more, and I never did anything like that again. I took out the power play and reluctance out of my sex life. I asked explicitly for permission to people that I even considered touching, and I've been going out of my way to try and make sure this doesn't happen to anyone. My biggest concerns with sexual assault in conversation is how alienating the conversation can be. Even though the people whose minds we need to change are the assailants, all of the dialogue goes to the victims. Not to denigrate their platform, but I have never seen a single dialogue made by a perpetrator where people didn't tell the perpetrator to go kill themselves, to rot in prison, etc. There's no morally accessible place of reference for these people to internalize that coming on to girls that are hesitant to sleep with them is bad, even if the person verbally consents. In the modern day, it's black and white. You're a grapper that deserves to die, or you aren't. In a world where we claim it's the grappers who need to change their actions, we don't actively encourage them to consider and rethink their mindsets. In my case, where I blatantly grapped my girlfriend, it was easy for me to reflect on my actions and see the errors of my way. I was able to see how in previous relationships, not related to physically forcing myself upon them, I had acted in ways that even my girlfriends didn't know how to bring up to me. That's not to say that any of their claims would hold up in court, but it is to say that I understand I did not obtain their full consent, and I could have very easily assaulted them without knowing, even if it would be rejected in a court of law. I always thought that grape was holding someone down and forcing them to have sex with you, and that convincing somebody to sleep with you when they weren't sure was just getting laid. I don't think so anymore. I don't think that grappers should be allowed to speak so that people can understand that grappers have done nothing wrong. Quite the opposite. I think that they should speak publicly so that people can understand what they have done wrong and stop themselves from doing it. It's ironic that even after I realized what I did wrong over the years, there was nowhere for me to talk about my experience and help other people come to those conclusions before they assault someone. That's why I made this post. I'm not hoping to change anybody's mind or for anybody to tell me that I did the right thing. I didn't. I'm confessing to my sins in the hopes that any people who are towing the line when having sex might reconsider. And it goes without saying, but she approves this post.